Are you sick of sounding lame on gigs? Are you tired of playing the same old lines? Do you want to sound way cool and pick up all the babes? Well, you're in the right place, cause I'm Chazzz LB, and these 3 exercises are about to change your life.
Hey guys, sorry about that. I let my brother Chazzz get a little too involved in the YouTube making process here. But look, in all seriousness, these exercises might not change your life, but these are super important exercises and things that will definitely benefit your playing a lot. A lot of times we get so locked into practicing the same stuff, and so often I find that developing improvisers don't end up getting into the concept of melodic chromaticism. And to me, it is the #1 thing that so many people should really be practicing. Obviously, what you should be practicing depends on a lot of factors, exactly who you are and what you're working on, what your strengths and weaknesses are, what you've worked on so far in your life and your development. That's something that I get into more, on a personalized type of approach with the Text Lesson Studio membership. So if you ever want to join that, it's open right now. It's not always open, but right now it's open, and so you can join as a Text Lesson Studio member. And melodic chromaticism is something that I am working on with a bunch of the students in that program. And again, the reason for that is because it really will develop your vocabulary and your abilities when it comes to line construction. So often I find with developing players, they get so locked into just trying to be able to plug in the scale notes that match with a chord, and that really doesn't quite cut it when you're trying to, sound a lot more hip and convincing in your line construction. And most importantly, you're just gonna have a lot more fun when you're able to get into this type of sound. With melodic chromaticism, it's really going to make you sound a lot more like a jazz master. All the legends were using chromaticism in their playing, and all of the jazz legends were able to do it in a way that was really melodic. So, how do you do that? Let's get into that. These 3 exercises are really going to help you get into this concept. All right, so before we get into it, just a real quick example of what this type of concept sounds like in a line. So what does it sound like when you're using melodic chromaticism? All right, so that example might be a little exaggerated. You might not necessarily pack that much chromaticism into a single line, but as you can see, it really sounds a lot hipper than just pushing the scale notes and just playing the notes of the scale inside of a tonality. There I was essentially playing around on B flat major tonality, but I was able to get a lot more type of colors and variation in the sound just by adding all of that chromaticism. So today with these 3 exercises that we're going to get into, one of them is just straight up an exercise. It's a technical thing. We'll start with that. The second thing that we're going to get into is a phrase exercise. I like to call them phrase workouts. Essentially, it's like a happy medium between an exercise and a phrase, and it's something that you work out and take through all the keys, which is going to be super valuable. We'll talk about that more in a second. And then the last thing that we're going to do actually over a song form. So we're going to do an enclosure exercise that goes through a song form. So to start, let's get into the first exercise. So again, this first exercise is a real straightforward technical type of exercise, but when you learn these things, you're going to notice that you have a lot of musical growth, not just in terms of mechanical growth or technical growth. You're going to really develop your ears and your understanding of vocabulary a lot more, especially if you understand how the exercises work. So with all 3 of these exercises, we're going to get into the concept of enclosures. Enclosures are when you have melodic chromaticism that goes around a note. So we're going to be landing on a target note, and we're going to be approaching it chromatically, and the shape of the chromaticism is going to go around the note. It's not just going to go down into the note or up into the note. It's going to go around the note. So it's going to have both notes or a single note above and below. So with this exercise, we're going to have 2 parts. The first part is going to be totally diatonic, and then the second part is going to be more chromatic. So for the diatonic part, we're essentially just going to play a step, step, skip shape going up the scale. So we're going to do it from each degree of the major scale. It's going to sound like this. Then for the second part of the exercise, we're going to do this big enclosure. that's going to start with a diatonic note. It's going to step down one step from where we left off. And then from there, it's going to play chromatic notes that wrap around the target note. The target note is just going to be the next degree of the scale. So if we're starting in concert B flat, then the next target note of the next measure is going to be C. So we're going to wrap around that C chromatically. That will sound like this. Now, depending where we are in the scale, that shape might be a little different because at some points of the scale, the spacing is a little different. Sometimes with the spacing of the scale, we're going to be coming from beat 3 into beat 1 of the next measure with a total interval of a minor third, and sometimes we're going to have a major third. So we're going to have two variations of the chromatic shape. The shape that we're going to do the most is going to go down 2 half steps in a row. Then it's going to go down a whole step to be a half step under the target note, and then it will resolve. The variation of that shape is going to go down a whole step, then down a half step, then down a whole step to once again be a half step below the target note, and then it will resolve. So essentially when we put all that together, it's going to sound like this. Then when we go descending, we're going to use that same idea, but we're going to change the diatonic shape. So the diatonic shape is going to be a step up, another step up, then we're going to skip down to that original note. Then from there, we'll do another step up, and we're going to do an enclosure that's going to bring us down to the next target note. And the next target note is going to be down a scale degree from where we left off. So that's going to sound like this. Now, a lot of people ask, where can you use this exercise? So there's one important thing to remember, which is by doing exercises like this, we're really just building up our skills. And so this is actually going to make it so we can actually improvise better just from practicing and internalizing exercises like this, especially when we bring it through the keys. But in terms of tonality, this is going to work modally. So what that means is if we're playing this exercise in B flat major, that means that it can also work on a C minor chord, a D minor chord, an E flat major chord, an F7 chord, a G minor chord, and an A half diminished 7 chord. So essentially all the chords that you can build up from each degree of the major scale are going to be chords that end up sounding nice when paired with this exercise. So the point being that any of this material works over any chord that is associated with the B flat major tonal system. That's why this content ends up being super useful when you're improvising. So essentially those chords would sound like this. And we're actually doing something cool this week. If you want to sign up for the Text Lessons Studio membership, then you'll actually get a download of this exercise in all 12 keys, as well as the 2 other exercises that we're about to check out today. So again, this is a concept that I work on a lot with the Text Lessons Studio members. And so if you want to get into this more together, we can actually work on this one-on-one through text and email. You can send me videos with your questions and your playing for all sorts of feedback. It's a really awesome membership program. So just check that out if you want to see some more details about how it all works, and would love to work with you over there. All right, so I mentioned earlier that the second exercise is going to be like a phrase workout. It's pretty much a short phrase, but it acts as a workout because it's a little phrase that you can take through the keys. Now, that's easier said than done, but if you have the patience and discipline to do it, it's going to make you improve so much. It's really going to lock in a lot of good vocabulary and help you internalize some really good language. So this phrase workout sounds like this. Now, people talk a lot about practicing bebop scales in jazz, and bebop scales are cool, but the thing is, bebop scales only add 1 chromatic note in the whole scale. And really, what we want to do when we're improvising is we want to be able to add melodic chromaticism all over the place. So that's what we essentially accomplish in this exercise. We start going down like it's a major bebop scale by adding a chromatic note in between the 5th and 6th notes. But then we also do an enclosure around the 3rd, and then we do another enclosure. We go right into another enclosure around the root. So we end up doing chromaticism down into the 5th, coming from the root up top. Then we do the enclosure around the 3rd and the enclosure around the root at the end. So this is a great one to just take through the keys. That would sound like this. Now, if you're a saxophonist, by the way, this is the first time I'm playing on a Nexus reed for a video here. This is a Nexus prototype reed. We've just about finished. We're really being thorough with every product that we're creating for Nexus saxophones. If you haven't heard about it already, make sure to check it out at nexussax.com. Sign up for the mailing list there, and then you'll be the first to know when we open up for pre-orders for things like reeds, mouthpieces, and saxophones. So this is going to be another example of a phrase that technically fits over B flat major. However, check out if you use this phrase on another chord that fits within the B flat major tonal system. For instance, G minor. There I just played that exact same phrase, but I added a G at the end just to resolve on the tonic so you can really hear how it fits in G minor. All right, so for the last exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 note enclosures into the root of every chord on a jazz blues form. So there are obviously a lot of different ways you can play the chords in a blues, but what I'm going to show you is an example of playing enclosures around the roots of a pretty common jazz blues form. We're going to see essentially everything we know about a blues form where it goes through the 4 and the 5 chords, but it's also going to do a lot of different 2-5-1s and then one even cool diminished 7th chord. Again, this is something that I'm working on with the Text Lesson Studio members, so if you want to get into it in more detail, definitely sign up for that and you'll get a free download of this exercise. But for now, let's just check out an example of the exercise from a masterclass that I recently released with Jazz Lesson videos. That's the Soloing Techniques Masterclass. In that masterclass, we do 3 note enclosures into every chord tone of every chord on a blues. So that's going to be pretty hip. But for now, let's just check out doing those enclosures into the root of every chord on a blues. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned something from the video today. As you all know by now, I'm making a lot more content for you all while I'm off the road. And so I would love if you subscribe to the YouTube channel here and click that bell so you get notifications whenever I release a new video. And if you haven't already, make sure to give this video a like and leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you want me to cover next time, and I'll get to a video as soon as I can on whatever topics you guys want me to get into.